Okay, as I was saying, multiplying square roots is probably one of my favorite lessons. But multiplying square roots sometimes gets kids confused when we go back to adding and subtracting square roots. So I'll show you what I mean by that in just a second. So for example number 1, go ahead and write down 2 square root 3 times 5 square root 7. So you're going to take 2 square root 3, for example number 1, times 5 square root 7. So we're still going to look at these example problems. And we're still going to look at our radicans. Can you simplify either of these radicans? Can you simplify this radicand of 3? No. Can you simplify the radicand of 7? No, because they're both prime numbers. So in this case, you can't simplify them. You can't factor them. So we're going to go ahead and move on. So when you multiply square roots, the first step you're going to do is multiply your coefficients. So if I'm going to multiply together my coefficients, what 2 numbers am I multiplying? What are my coefficients? 2 and 5. So I'm going to take 2 times 5 and get, what's 2 times 5? You guys, if we can't eat breakfast and focus at the same time, breakfast will be done in here. 10. So after you multiply the coefficients, because we could not factor our radicands, we're simply going to multiply our radicands together. So when I multiply my radicands together, what numbers am I multiplying together? 3 times 7, which is 21. Now, it stays as a radicand, square root of 21. That's going to be my final answer. So this is a basic multiplying square root example. Now, you guys should know at this point, math with me, we start with something simple and we build upon it. So not all of our example problems are going to be this simple. Some of our example problems, we're going to have larger numbers, larger radicands, which we're actually going to have to factor. But we'll get to that in just a second. Okay, let's look at example number 2. So example number 2, go ahead and write this down on your paper, please. 4 square root 2 times 4 square root 10.
Can you put the dot instead of the x?
Ask that again.
Can you put the dot instead of the x?
Yes. So Kelly had a really good question here. Instead of putting that x, can you use the little dot to show multiplication? Absolutely. I don't like to use x's for multiplication when we're doing algebra because it can get confusing with the variable. So now here, again, we're going to look at our radicands, our inside number. Can you factor this radicand? No, it's a prime number. Can you factor this radicand? Yes. So what 2 numbers can you multiply together to get 10? 2 and 5. These are both prime, so I circle them. Now, here's going to be the new difference. I'm not even playing. If we can't do it, we're done. Here's where we come to the new thing. Okay, so we can factor our radicand 10. From here, we're going to have to multiply these together. How you're going to do that is the first step, you're going to multiply together your coefficient. So my coefficients are what here? 4 and 4. So what's 4 times 4? 16. Now this is going to be a little different. Because I could factor my 10, I just can't multiply together my radicands. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take all my prime numbers from my radicands and write them under one square root sign. So this is where it differs from adding and subtracting, because adding and subtracting, they each got their own square roots, right? When we multiply, they go under the same square root sign in order from least to greatest. So you're going to have to work 2 radicands and all their prime numbers at the same time. So what am I going to put up under the square root sign for the factors of 2 and 10?
2.
2 times...
Times 2 times 5.
Perfect.
You're going to circle the 2, 2.
Let's stop right there. So where Kaylon got these from, he took the prime number 2 here with this one for 10 and then the 5, and he wrote them all under one single square root sign. That's the new part, guys. That's it. Because from here, we're going to follow everything that we know how to do already. So the next thing that we do after we get all our pairs, we circle our pairs, right? So we're going to circle our pairs. Our pairs cancel. And what happens with this pair of twos? Where does it go? It goes on the outside. What's it joining on that outside? Hold that question. 16. So what's 16 times 2? 32. And then what do I have stuck on the inside? What's the radicand on the inside? 5. And that's it. That's your answer. Question.
No, I was just trying to see, you have to add that to outside level.
Multiplying, yeah. We're multiplying. Okay. So, the steps that we're going to follow for multiplying square roots are going to be step 1. Multiply coefficients. So you're going to multiply your outside numbers. Step 2. You're going to factor your radicands and then combine with factors in order. And then step 3. Continue steps to simplify the square root. For some reason, to me, multiplying and dividing square roots is much easier than adding and subtracting square roots. Same thing with fractions, thank you. Multiplying and dividing fractions to me is always easier than adding and subtracting. Jalen, you need to be writing this down, please. Okay, so again, multiplying square roots, 3 simple steps. You know how to do all of these steps already. So just putting them all together. Multiply your outside numbers, your coefficients. Factor your radicands. Then we're going to combine those factors all together under one square root in order. And then we continue the steps to simplify the square root, which we learned a couple weeks ago. So what I want you guys to look at is example number 3. So example number 3, you're going to multiply the square root of 6 times the square root of 15. So example number 3, the square root of 6 times the square root of 15. So if you look back at your note sheet and you follow those steps, the first step says multiply coefficients. Do I have any coefficients here to multiply? No. So if there are no coefficients to multiply, we just skip that step. Okay? So we're going to move to step 2, which is to factor the radicands and combine them all together in order. So if I'm going to factor the radicands, for 6 is going to be 2 and 3. So those are prime. I'm going to circle. And then for 15, it's going to be 3 and 5. Make sure you circle your prime numbers. It's going to be so important. I will not take points off for you not circling your prime numbers, but it's going to be so much easier to identify all your prime numbers that go under one single square root sign. So the rest of step 2 says after you factor your radicand, you're going to combine the factors in order. So we're going to combine all those factors that we just wrote out in order under one square root sign. So when I go to combine them in order, this one's kind of easy because I wrote them in order. What's it going to look like under here? Perfect. And then our last step is to go ahead and continue simplifying as normal, which would be, as Damon said, circle our pairs. Our pairs cancel with the square root. And then we're going to write it in simplest form. So this group of pairs becomes a single factor in my, where does this go? This group of, the outside. So it becomes a single 3 on the outside, square root. Now what did not have a pair? And the, which equals 10. And that's your final answer. That's it. Jalen, you need to get this down. You need to keep your eyes open. Okay, example number 4. Example number 4 is going to be a little bit longer. We're going to have 2 square root 98 times 3 square root 10. Okay, Jair, what's step 1 say to do? According to your notes.
Multiply the coefficient.
Okay, so go ahead and multiply your coefficients. What do you get?
So 98 times 3.
What are your coefficients?
2 square root 98.
What are your coefficients? 2 and
3.
3. So what's 2 times 3?
6.
6. So there I multiplied my coefficients. What steps 2 say to do, Kira? The first part of step 2. What's it tell me to do?
Factor radicants and factors in order.
Yeah, so let's factor our radicants. So what 2 numbers can I multiply together to get 98? 7 and 14. Okay, 7 is prime, so I'm going to circle it. For 14, Kelly?
7 and 2.
And I'm going to circle my primes. Michael, if I factored the radicand of 10, what 2 numbers can I multiply together to get 10?
2 and 5.
2 and 5. And I'm going to circle both of these because they are prime. Now, the second part that Kira said, we're going to combine all of these in order. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw a single square root sign. When you multiply, it is one single square root sign. And I'm going to put all of my factors in order. So what are my factors in order going to look like, Alex? So all of these factors that I've circled, I'm going to put them in order under this square root sign. Wait. So I have a 2 times what?
2, 5, 7, 7.
So when I'm doing this, I sometimes go through it and I cross them out as I go. So I make sure that I got all of my factors. You can choose to do that. You can choose not to. It's just something that helps me. And then the last step, simplify as usual. So simplifying as usual, we circle our pairs. Our pairs cancel, and they move to the outside. So what numbers are going to be joining this 6 on the outside? And so we're going to have
2
6
squares 7.
times 2 times 7. And then what's stuck on the inside? 5. So then we're going to have to simplify that on out. So I couldn't do that in my head real fast. So what's 6 times 2?
6 times 2 is
12. And the 12 times 7 is what, you guys?
84.
84. Square root what?
5.
And that's your final answer. Now, again, you don't have to show this step here. The 6 times 2 times 7, you don't have to do. I just couldn't quickly work that in my head, so I went ahead and wrote it out. So you could really go from this. So you could really go from here to here without doing this step in the green. All right, 2 more examples. You ready? All right, example number 5. So the parentheses is just a different way of showing multiplication. When you have a group of parentheses touching one another, it just means to multiply. Jaden, can you go ahead and write this down for me? Sit up, up, so you're not sleeping. So we have 4 square root of 72 times the square root of 75.
Make it a 1.
You can.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, why doesn't it matter? Because 4 times 1 is still 4, yeah. So Damon had the right idea here, because our step 1 on our note says to multiply our coefficients. Well, this one doesn't have a coefficient. So I could throw 1 in there, but 4 times 1, or just the 4 by itself, is still going to equal 4. So if you choose to put the 1 in there, that's fine. But if you choose not to, that's fine as well. So if we multiply our coefficients together, we end up with just the 4. Next step, factor our radicands. Somebody I haven't heard from today. Who can tell me what 2 numbers can multiply together to get 72?
You don't hear from me?
Deja,
You don't hear from me?
you're going to do 75. 3 and 24?
I did 4 in the example.
I would have done 7 and 9, or 8 and 9.
Oh,
But, Kaylon, all those are fine. The main thing you want to make sure is that we all have the same prime numbers at the end, okay? So use the numbers you have, we'll just compare. What about for 24?
3 and 8.
Okay, keep going.
You circle 3 and 2 and 4. And then 2 and 3.
Okay, good. Damon, for 75,
5 and 15,
5 and 15.
circle 5, then on 15, probably 3, 5.
Okay, so now I'm going to take all of these numbers that I circled and combine them under a single square root sign in order from least to greatest. So what's that going to look like in order from least to greatest?
2 times 2 times 3 times
Oh, hold on. So we have 2 times 2 times what?
3.
I have another 2, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I have 3 2's. Okay, times 2 times
3 times 3 times 50. And then 5 times
how many 5's do I have? 2. Good. Okay, so right there is step 2. And you're down to the last step, which is just simplify as usual. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to circle all my factor pairs. Just because I have so many factor pairs and I'm dealing with bigger numbers, I'm going to write out that extra step. You guys don't have to, but I'm choosing to do it just because it helps me. So I already have one coefficient of 4. What's joining that coefficient? The 2 and what else? And what else? The 5. Now what's stuck in the radicand that did not cancel? And 3. So as I said, this step here you guys don't have to write out. I do, it just helps me. So now I go ahead and simplify it. So I'm going to multiply my coefficient. So 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 3 is 24. What's 24 times 5? What is it? Use your calculator. What's 24? 120?
Yeah,
Okay.
120, I knew 120 over 6. No.
That's what you told me to write.
6.
Oh.
Man, you trying to play me.
No, you got to use the correct terminology. Good. 120 square root 6. Any questions on this one?
No, but
All right. Ooh, this last one's tough.
No, it's not.
Oh, yes, it is.
Don't do next one. It better not be long.
I make no promises. All right, we ready?
Hold on.
There we go.
You tricked us?
No, not yet. It will. So while you guys are working on it, I'm going to work on it, and then we're going to compare. I saw that. That's my phone, sorry. It's chat. When you think you have it, show me.
Ha ha ha.